Not your average tabletop. Woohoo!
Welcome to Not Your Average Tabletop. I'm Zach,
And I'm Pepper.
and today we're reacting to the 25 games put into the Board Game Geek Hall of Fame. I think it's celebrating Board Game Geek's 25th year, which is really awesome. It's a very helpful site if you've never used it before. If you're very into board gaming, I would highly recommend going and checking it out. It's a good tool to kind of learn more about games. You got people's ratings on there. It's got like weights, what player counts things are good at, and whatnot. But yeah, that's for another video. If you want to hear more about that, if you don't know much about it, we can do another video. I don't know that we're experts on Board Game Geek, but we can definitely try to point to some helpful things on here. But let's get to these games, and I will say there are some we have not played. We're not experts in all these games, so apologize if you were hoping we would talk about all of them in great detail because we do not know all of them. So if that's what you're looking for, sorry, we don't have it here. But the first one is Terra Mystica here. We sorted these based on these thumbs on the side. I don't know if that's people celebrating those ones in particular the most. So this one had the least thumbs, but it's still a very popular game. It's had a bunch of spin-offs now.
Yeah.
Gaia Project and Terra Nova and Age of Innovation, all different levels, kind of using the same thing. The only one we've played is Terra Nova, but I believe we were going to play this one, and in preparation, it seemed like it had some very similar mechanics in this one as that, where you're kind of going out on this board of different kind of, I don't know if they're different terrains kind
Terrain
of that
types.
you're
Yeah.
taking and you're building things up, and then you're scoring points on certain things at certain points in the game. Uh, I would say I thought I was really gonna love this one, and maybe I would if I played this version of it and played it a lot. But the first game of Terra Nova, I was like, I
Hmm.
don't quite see the hype. I think it was something with the scoring, so maybe like knowing that would change my thoughts. It's kind of one of those games like Rurik Dawn of Kiev. I always pick on that one where I love everything, and then it gets to the scoring part, and that's a little bit of it falls flat for me. That's kind of how I felt playing it, but I did only play it one time, so
Yeah.
this one might be one of those that's like repeat plays, but I know it's very popular. Obviously, it has to
Yeah.
be to have all those games that kind of come from it, and people all rate this one very highly. So this one definitely makes sense to be on a list like this.
Yeah. Makes sense. This is a huge game, and I think I probably liked our play of Terra Nova more, but I think you might like your our plays of Terra Mystica more and the more complicated ones more than I do. But yeah. So welcome to the Hall of Fame, Terra Mystica. What did it cost?
But then, yeah, the next one is Diplomacy. And this is one that I feel like would not fit our game group at all. I have not played this. Maybe you have, Pepper?
I have not. It is all about destroying friendship, which I
Yeah.
would think I'd be great, and that would be right up my alley with this game. In my selfish ways in some of our campaign games, as Thunderbeard, this would be right up his alley, but I have not played this game.
Yeah, and it's got that 2 to 7 player count. What is that? 3 6 hour time period there,
Oh
up
my
to 6 hours.
goodness.
So that's a thing that we aren't typically into. I'm guessing this one plays better at those higher player counts, which we just don't tend to play. And then yeah, the destroying friendships, the kind of negotiation style game is just not one of those that our game group tends to do. It's just not our style. But I think this one was one that was very popular and probably still is in certain groups. I think it's, if you've got a group that really likes playing it, I'm sure it's one that you get together and play often. I know I've heard of this one multiple, multiple times. And if you're making a list of games and trying not to have them all like,
Yeah,
oh, we're just going to take the top 25 from Board Game Geek, from their people's rankings type thing. You're not you kind of want a mixture of different games that have had an impact on the hobby. I think this one makes sense that it would be included in a list like
yeah,
this. Very unique in that way of kind of lots of negotiation gets you into kind of that style of game if you like that.
yeah. I see this is a pioneer in the play by mail space, which I'm like, ooh, that sounds cool. We need to get some
Hmm.
pigeons or something and send messages, ravens, to each other to make game decisions. It's the only way to play it.
Only way.
And then moving on
Uh,
to Kalis, which we have played a version of this. We played Kalis 1303 or whatever it was, a newer version of it. And it's kind of a worker placement game where you are building additional worker placement spots along a path. And then I think you place them and activate them, your workers, in order along the winding path as well. So you have to think as well about the actions order that you are taking. This one felt like a classic game, a classic worker placement game. Felt like we got it way too late into our careers. That was
mhm.
probably it was a couple years ago now, but at the time we'd already been playing games for like 5 years, and I felt like one that we could have picked up right at the start. And it was a solid one. I enjoyed it a lot. I think I probably enjoyed it the most of our gaming group. So I'm a little surprised that it's here. I don't hear about this one too much, but it is.
Yeah, and it says here that popularized worker placement genre. So maybe it did. We weren't. We probably got into the hobby after a number of these ones, so might be a little bit different. Like you said, we kind of got it also in our hobby a little bit later. I think that's another video topic where games that we got at the wrong time in our kind of hobby career. Because yeah, this one should be one that I absolutely love and get back to the table all the time. Because I love the idea of putting out like new worker placement spots. I just love worker placement games in general. So this one should be everything for me, and I do like it, but it's not one that makes like my top games of all time list. Uh, but yeah, I'm also a little surprised that this one's on there, but I I think it's a very solid game, and it makes sense that it is, especially I don't know at 2005 when it came out, or at least that's fourth edition, so probably earlier than that if that is based on the fourth edition. So at the time it came out, it would have been probably really something,
Yeah,
I would think.
yeah,
So,
for sure, for sure. Oh boy. Next up, Civilization, Avalon Hall, second edition, 1982. So we're going back to the 80s. No wonder this one's making the Hall of Fame. It appears to be a classic. I imagine this, yeah, another like 6 hour game here. Civilization game that you're building up your civilization, I assumed. Considered the first game with a technology tree. So that's definitely a big deal. There are a lot of games that use that mechanism in here, and being
mhm.
one of the first, maybe one of the first board games ever produced back in 80. No
I think
question.
only checkers and chess were out before this one. I think those are the
Yes,
only two
those
games
two.
prior to this.
Yeah, no surprise here. I mean, I didn't know it existed, but looking at it, I'm like, it feels right.
Yeah, there's another one on this list that I would have thought would have this spot that also happened to make the list, but it does make sense that this one is on here as well. Another one we have not played, but yeah, you got kind of those same kind of issues as the other game with the high play time and the player counts. Probably better at a higher player count kind of game, but
And 12
yeah,
plus,
at the
it's like,
time,
oh, play for 6 hours with your 12-year-old.
yeah, I'm guessing this one's got a little bit more to that than that, so makes sense.
Oh boy.
Ooh, and we got another one kind of with some of those same features, 1830 railways and robber barons. And this is part of the 18XX train games, where it's kind of a map and you're making train routes, I believe is how they were. I've never played one. And then you're buying stocks and stuff in the different companies and stuff. So it's kind of a market game as well, or at least a stock manipulation game. And yeah, that I'm probably interested in trying an 18XX game at some point. I would like to at least try one. I don't know that owning one would be the smartest thing because I don't know that anyone else in the group would really like it. Zachary probably would like it, but outside of that, I don't think you would like it, and I don't think Michaela. Well, I know Michaela would not like it.
Hey, you don't know.
I'm very confident Michaela would not like an 18XX game. Uh, but yeah, if I don't know, it sounds like this was maybe one of the original
Yeah, one of the
leaders in
ones.
the 18xx genre, and I know there are a lot of people that love these games, and there's a lot of them that are being made and made today and stuff. So it's um, if it started all the way back in 1986 and it's still going strong 40 almost 50 years later, that obviously says something about what a game has done for at least a
Yeah.
genre of the board gaming space, and it's probably inspired certain things in other games as well.
Yeah,
But
I would be interested just to see how close it feels to the board games we're used to. Maybe it
no.
is, maybe it does feel like, hey, that's just another board game. And if you don't hype it up as this big, intimidating experience, maybe Mac will have a good time with it.
Maybe.
Oh boy, another one that's not really our style of game, Cosmic Encounter. The game where everybody is a very unique alien race, and I believe you are just manipulating and negotiating to try to get, I think, a race to a certain amount of victory points. I think is how this game goes, or maybe eliminate each other, eliminate certain players. I don't know much about this one. I watched Dice Tower's playthrough with Mike Delicio's first game ever, and it seemed fun. It seemed interesting, but
Is this the one
um,
that Tom really likes?
I think so. I think so. I think
Okay.
this was the one that when we were in Vegas, you could enter to possibly play a game, and there was
Yeah.
one play it with Tom, and I'm like, it's between that and Terraforming Mars with Stephen Buonocore, and I'm like. I think I go with Terraforming Mars. That's the one that I know, and this is the one that I am terrified to learn on the spot. But it is a
Yeah.
classic. This one's been around for a while as well. It has not been around since only 2018. This is back decades ago. Um,
42nd anniversary edition.
yes, so 42 years before that. And yeah, it's been around and been popular just in Tom's list. I think it's been in and out right around his top 10 for as long as he's done it. So it has massive staying power.
Hmm. And yeah, I think the one thing that hurts it, because this does feel like one that I'd maybe be willing to play or want to play at some point, but it does have that 3 to 5 player count, and anything that needs a minimum of three, and my guess is it's probably actually better with even more than three. It's just one of those hard things for our game group. And fortunately, a lot of these like classic games, as we continue the ones we haven't played, I think all have that same thing where it's like, it's actually better at higher player count. Well, it's actually because their games were much more interactive. I think
Mhm.
back in the back in the day,
People
I
had
think
more
they started
friends.
much more interactive and maybe little bits of cutthroatness.
Yeah.
There still are some today, but I think it's we've gotten away from a lot of that in a lot of
Yes.
today's games. It feels like
Yeah,
there are
for sure.
still ones that have that, but
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Next up, Concordia, another one that we have played. You've played a little bit more than I have, so you talk about how great this game and why it deserves to be number one Hall of Fame.
this is actually one I want to play more of because it's got kind of the I think like the century kind of card thing where you can play the action cards from your hand, and you can have like a pickup turn or whatever, and you're placing things out on the board, kind of controlling different areas out on the board, managing some resources, I believe, to um, do the different things in the game. It's been a while since I've played it, but I do. This is one that I wanted to get back to for some reason because I think Zach and Carson had both of them, Concordia and Istanbul. I compare those two in my head all the time, and I'm just like, I far want to play Concordia over Istanbul again.
Right.
But yeah, it's got that really cool mechanism, and then like at the end of the game, I think your multipliers and different scores are based on those cards you have at the end of the game, if I remember right, which I also found really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a cool one and just another classic feeling game. I see this talked about all the time, see it on top of lists all the time, so not really any surprise here.
No, that did not surprise me either. This one definitely does not surprise me. This does not surprise me one bit.
Mm-mm.
And it's although you don't like the game, I For some reason, I feel like I've gotten the hate for that, and people thought I don't like this game, and I do actually like the game more than you. I have not played it in a long time now. I've played the dual version quite a bit, uh, just because, again, playing at two players is just easier for how our game group usually lines up. But yeah, Seven Wonders is a great game. It deserves to be on this list. It's had it's had a lot of expansions. It's got the new edition here, and yeah, this you're drafting different cards to try to score points via like military, and you got your production cards, and you're just kind of continuously drafting and building these different cards for certain amounts of points. I get a, because it's been so long I've played it and I've played the Seven Wonders Duel. I'm like, and then you've got the different ways of victory, but I don't believe that is actually a thing in this game. It just feels like it is. But you can, yeah, go through like science and technology. I think other tech cards. I think they've got like all the different ones. Yeah, and it's a quick game because you're drafting Sushi Go style, kind of simultaneous drafting happening, and I think was it the first? If it was the first game to do that, that is a huge thing. I think because a lot of games have used that, and it makes it so that games can be a lot snappier.
I mean,
I love drafting from like a shared kind of thing on the table and being able to draft and kind of going around the table. But it's also fun to just have a hand of cards, be able to pick one, and kind of everyone's picking one at the same time, and you hand them to the next person. I prefer that when you can do it,
yeah,
unless it makes sense to have it out on the table.
it's hard to think. I'm like, is it? That just seems like such an obvious way to draft. Maybe just because it has become so commonplace, but
It does, but
like,
I don't
there's
know
no
if
way
it.
that could invent that way, but it might have. Yeah, it's a popular game. It's a popular game. That I mean, the fact that they include this one pretty recent compared to a lot of the other games uh, makes me a little upset that some games that weren't mentioned here. And you talk about the duel game, no Seven Wonders Duel. I'm like, have you seen how many duel games are being released in the last few years, and coming up still? And I'm like, you
Yeah,
can't deny the influence that Bruno Catala had with that Seven Wonders Duel.
yeah, I could definitely. If they did 25 years from now, another 25, I feel like Seven Wonders Duel would have to be on that list. I think.
Do you think they're gonna wait 25 years to do another
Oh, they're
one?
gonna wait 25
They
years.
ain't gonna do. They're gonna do this every year, every
They're gonna
single
add one
time.
more every year,
Okay, now
and
here's a game that I agree with. Pandemic, it made cooperative games popular. They would not
what
be
about Legacy?
anywhere near Pandemic Legacy. Yeah, that one should be on here too. It should have both of them. Because they popularized both of those things, cooperative, and then they're like, you know what? We'll take another stab at it. We're gonna just create a whole new genre, legacy games, and put
I
them
think there was
on.
Risk Legacy first. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that's the one they named, but it definitely made it more popular. I think the
for sure,
pandemic
for
ones
sure.
did.
Yeah,
Um,
this one is just pure co-op puzzly goodness.
but
It's
approachable.
Yes, very approachable. On your turn, you take four actions. It's pretty much just moving around a map and possibly curing disease or playing some cards or maybe trading them. And I think there's like eight actions, but they're all like half of them are the same thing, just different variations. And this one is just so many people have played this game, people who aren't even like gamers. This is their first game in the hobby. There's so many games that feel like Pandemic and have a very similar system. That's not even including the 300 versions of Pandemic that are out there. It's just absolutely crazy to have multiple versions of a game in the top 100 games of all time. You know, you have made an impact.
Yeah. Do you think the Lord of the Rings version here that is coming out this next year is going to be the best of the best?
I don't think so. I don't think so. They're gonna
Yeah.
say it is. They're gonna throw it up to number one, but it won't be. It won't be.
Yeah. When I first went through this list, kind of look at them quick, for some reason I missed Pandemic, and I'm like, oh, do they not have Pandemic on this list? I'm like, it has to be on here. Then I'm like, okay, I missed it. So it's like, I was having a mini heart attack. So I'm like, how do you not have Pandemic on this list? So I was glad to see it on there, even though I think you do enjoy it even more than I do. But I was gonna be fighting for it if it
He
wasn't on the
respects
list.
it. He respects co-op. Oh boy, now here's the one you like. But most importantly, we need brass.
We need Brass on there. I mean, considering Brass Birmingham is the current number one game on Board Game Geek as of filming this. Yeah, this is a nice another kind of economic game and a route building game. I would say, or yeah, manipulating the markets. I I watched a gameplay of this, I think from the World Series of Board Gaming, and let me just tell you, they play it much differently than than the games I've played of it. So there are definitely different levels of strategy to the brass. I've not played the Lancashire, the original brass, and I think that's kind of more of what this one is kind of that original. I have not played those, but I believe they're pretty similar to what Brass Birmingham is, and that I really enjoy what it does. It's, being that you get to do a couple actions using cards, kind of makes me think of the uh, kind of card use in um, Dune Imperium, where it kind of lets you go to certain spots on the board. So you have to kind of decide, do I want to use it there or use it another way or something. So I, I thought it's a pretty solid one. I think it deserves to be on there. Not just because Brass Birmingham is number one. I don't think that's the only reason. I think it is a very solid game and has inspired other great games.
I don't know if it deserves to be on here. This is one that I would question. I'm like they just feel too modern, but I am thinking more of Brass Birmingham. Um, I'm like definitely with all the very classic feeling games, this one does feel very fresh, very new. But it is a good game and has inspired a lot, but not as much as Acquire. 1964. How have we not played this game? My goodness, they talk about it always. It always looks cool. You got a board with a grid of spots and you're bidding them. And I think there's some investing and taking hostile takeovers that you're staging, which sounds cool. Real estate, that sounds like a cool theme to do. I don't know if it really is our type of game, mechanism wise, but I
Well, I'm
would
going to
really like to
surprise you,
try this
Pepper.
one.
I have not played this one. I do want to try it and will be able to try it. It is going to be showing up. I think I got the one of these. I think I might have even gotten the deluxe edition. I don't know what the difference was, but it was on sale for on Miniature Market, and I chose because of the other options on that day for the World Series of Board Gaming. Even though I've never played this game, this is the game that I'm going with on that day. So I
Oh,
need to
baby.
get some games of this
Oh,
in,
boy.
but we will see. Hopefully, I enjoy it. I think I still have time to change if I really hated it, but I think the other options were even more like I've got no chance.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah,
Beginner's
this
luck. I say you don't even practice it. You go there first game, they'll be like, this guy with his beginner's luck, he won the ring.
yeah, but
Yeah,
I think I remember I watched a gameplay of it from the World Series of Board Gaming as well. So a lot of these are in the World Series of Board
yeah.
Gaming, so that shows how good of games they are. And yet, I'm shocked that it's from like 60 years ago because it does feel like you could have told me a game like this just came out 5, 10 years ago, and I'd be like, yeah, I could see it. It feels like it fits in with the games.
Yeah.
I haven't played it, so maybe if I played it, I'd feel a little differently. Maybe I'd be like, some things about it feel a little bit off. But I also don't know if I don't know if they've made any slight changes to it over the
Yeah, that's
60
true.
years as well. But
Like,
yeah,
no, we're
I think
keeping it the exact same. Yeah.
this one definitely deserves to be on this list. And another one that deserves to be on this list, even though I've never played it. I'd like to try it at some point, but it's also one of those scary ones. I got into Unmatched, and now we have like every Unmatched box. I would be very worried. I don't think I would get into kind of having to have the best decks or whatever, building your deck and stuff. Uh, but yeah, this is a game that I feel like I don't know the actual financials of like the friendly local game stores, but this and like Pokemon, this is one of the main things I think that keeps them going. I guess it's one of the biggest money makers for them. And yeah, it's unfortunate that it's kind of for consumer wise that they just kind of keep coming out with. It's fun. I'm sure
Yeah.
if you've got the money to do it, it's fun to always have these new things. And I think recently they've been coming out with like IP ones. I don't know if they've always done that. Um, and those have been the ones that I've kind of been like, eh. I think they had like the Lord of the Ring one, and they had the One Ring, and I was like, it might be worth getting. Like, I wasn't even sure if that's like a starter set or how that works. Haven't looked into these enough, but yeah. This is
Yeah.
Richard Garfield. I guess do you think this should be in there, Pepper, or another game
No,
of
no,
his?
no. Bunny Kingdom absolutely has much more impact on the gaming sphere than Magic the Gathering. Maybe not quite, but yeah, this one's a huge, 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 huge game. Can't can't argue against it. Sadly, because I love to. Oh
And
boy.
this was the one that I thought when we were talking about the one earlier. This is I could see like through the ages. I feel like I've heard that one more,
Yes.
but so yeah, I'm not surprised that this one's on there. We have played this once on Board Game Arena, and uh, I enjoyed it. I'd like to actually try it again. I know it was one of those that it was a decent amount going on, and I feel like it's one where the more you play it, the better you become. Just because
Yeah.
you make certain choices at certain times, then you leave yourself kind of in a bad spot, and then feel like you're wasting time. But yeah, this one's um, got kind of the different ages of through the ages you're going and kind of upgrading things and changing your leaders, doing uh, we like produce population and stuff while trying to feed them. Uh, feel like a very tight game, and I thought it did a decent job at kind of simulating that feel.
Yeah, yeah, I actually enjoyed the game. I was very scared to play this one. I'm like, oh, this is going to be one of the most complicated games I've ever played, and I actually got along pretty well with it. So that was a surprise, and heard it. It feels like the definitive Civilization game, the granddaddy, the modern, little more modern granddaddy of
Yeah.
Civilization games. So yeah, not a surprise at all that this one is here.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it felt like it worked. I think we had two player. I don't remember if there was
Oh,
anything Board Game Arena was doing as like a third player or anything, but it felt like it worked at that player count.
yeah.
That's kind of what some of them, I think, do better at higher player counts. Let us know in the comments below if there's a great Civilization game out there that works well at two.
Yes, yes. Other than Tapestry, which
That's
we will
true.
be expecting to show up on this list a
We do
little
love
later.
Tapestry, and it has had influence. I am waiting.
Yes. Boy. Ooh. Race for the Galaxy. And this game, well, it's inspired more in its franchise. We have played Roll for the Galaxy, which I think
Hmm.
most people prefer race, but that is the one we played. We like dice, we like to chuck dice, and I think one of the main parts of this one that I hear referenced so many times, like, oh, it's got the race for the galaxy mechanism of one person chooses an action and everyone activates that action with the person choosing it getting a little bonus, a little bit extra. That has been used in so many games I can't count the amount of times that the Dice Tower members have brought that up in a review, talking about a separate game who has it. They can't not mention it if it's in there. It's
Yeah.
definitely had an influence, and from the dice game, I enjoyed the dice game quite a bit. And if this is that, but with cards and just not dice, it'll be a little less fun because you're not rolling dice, but it will still be a great game.
Yeah, I think that's another all-time mechanic, very similar to simultaneous play, if that is what Seven Wonders did. Uh, I guess that's another great mechanic. It's kind of surprising. I don't. We must not have any games with it though in them because I think the Great Wall was the first time Michaela had noticed that mechanism, and I was like, oh, we've actually got some other games that do that. So I don't know if I've had her actually play other ones. I think the Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition was the one I was really thinking.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, she might like that then because she did like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe she wants this one or Roll for the Galaxy.
Yeah. Gotta
Got a
try
few
it.
to try.
We've had it for years. We played it like once. Oh, wait, Tigris and Euphrates.
Ooh, have to
Reiner
have Reiner
Knizia.
Knizia.
You got to get a Reiner Knizia on here. I have not played this one, but I have played a re-implementation in Yellow and Yangtze, the app for that. I did play that one, and I think it is pretty similar. You have a few different colored tokens, which each have special effects, I believe, and you're playing them out on a board, trying to surround different cities to gain influence and gain control of the cities to score. And based on the different colors, you're scoring. I forget exactly how it goes, but I think there's different colored cities, and you're trying to get points in each of them. And it kind of does the old balancing out, or you score your lowest of each of the colors, or something like that. It's got a bunch of these mechanisms, at least for that one that I played. I don't know the differences with Tigris and Euphrates, but it did feel like a very classic game. I think even the components look very classic on the board. Although I'm sure there are 100 versions of this. I don't know. I've heard a lot of it. I don't know. This is from '97. I'm sure it has inspired a lot of those more abstract games that I eat right up and absolutely adore. So I have this game to thank for that, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know that I have played this one, but I think we definitely have to. I think it is on Board Game Arena, so this is one that I would like to get played because yeah, it is another one that I think gets mentioned a decent amount in lists or various reasons, and yeah, I think it deserves to be on a list like this. Ooh, Twilight Struggle 20th Anniversary Hall of Fame Edition, English edition, definitive version of the classic Cold War history game. So yeah, this one's a two-player only game where you what is it, the U.S. and Russia fighting.
I think so,
Uh,
yeah.
so one player takes on each side, and then there's the some card play that's happening between the two until you eventually win. I think you're trying to. This is another one that I think I sort of played part of the app, but then was very confused,
Yes.
and then I don't know that I ever went back to it.
That is exactly what I did. I remember downloading this app, starting a game, and not finishing it, and never going back to it. Uh, but it's a great game, I'm sure. This one
Looks like
is
it
also
is
mentioned
ranked number one on Board Game Geek for a few years. It's
years.
undeniable. It's had a huge impact in our hobby. Tense card driven. So yeah, I think if you know how to play the game, actually read the rules, don't just try to get into the app and do some crazy stuff. I think it I think it is a very solid game, especially for two players. It's that nice kind of tug of war, I would think, and yeah, it definitely maybe was a start and led the way for future two-player games to be made and uh, be top games. This is really where the duel all started.
Yes, the beginning of the duel. The duel, the beginning. Something. I don't know. Not a good name. Oh boy, Castles of Burgundy. My goodness, your favorite game of all time. You can't. This is the only one that should be in this list too.
Yeah, this one has to be on the list for me. I This is the epitome of his point salad game. Stefan Feld is known for the designer of this one. And yeah, I think that has been used in many games where you can score in multiple different ways. This one does it really well. You've got multiple ways to score chunks and chunks of points. I know there's some people that don't like that style of thing, but I really love I really love when you get kind of this hit of points here, hit of points there,
Yeah,
and it's just a lot of fun, and just the way you're kind of using these two dice, you'd think, oh, well, if you roll badly, you have no chance, And you can get on a streak of kind of bad rolls, and there's some mitigation, but you could potentially set yourself up badly. But overall, it is one where they make that work. It's a random dice roll, then you can do many different things with each of those numbers, but at the same time, very few things. So it keeps it from being like, oh my gosh, I've got 500 million options, like an
that's true.
Uwe Rosenberg game. It's very solid. I think it belongs on this list, and yeah,
Yeah, that's true. It keeps it nice and simple. Speaking, taking a shot in the dark here. Speaking of an Uwe Rosenberg game, It is not this one. Dang, I was hoping it would work. But this is Power Grid. This is Friedman Freeze. I've heard of that name
He
there.
makes all the green games,
All the green ones,
and
yes.
usually they start with F, but this one does not. But yeah, this one is another network game, I believe. This one I have not played, and I suppose I don't know the similarities between this and Brass, but uh, yeah, if this one came out before Brass, and this is route building, I believe, I would maybe say that this should be in here over Brass. I mean, they're
Mm,
both in here, so that is fine. But yeah, I could be totally wrong. I don't fully know what this one is, but I believe it's got kind of that
yeah.
sort of route building feel. Uh,
It
Bid,
looks like
network,
it
and
sounds
manage
like it.
resources in a race to supply a city with power.
It
So
sounds
yeah, I think
like it.
it's
Brass is a fraud. It shouldn't be on this list.
so yeah, I think this one came out before Brass, but I could be wrong. Maybe Brass came out first. So whoever came out first gets the spot.
Yes, but yeah,
But no, I
very.
think this is really well known as well. It's got a bunch of different boards and stuff to use. This is one that I would like to try at some point.
Me too. No. Deck build, the granddaddy of deck building. We're gonna say granddaddy 100 times because that's what these games are. Dominion. There may have been some deck building, but this put it on the map, and it's in its purest form
It
of deck
is.
building. You just draw it, A, B, C, whatever those stand for. It's that simple to play this game. You draw your cards, you play a few, and you buy cards, and you keep going till you get enough points or run out the deck. And this one somehow, even though it is the most bare bones deck building game you can think of, it's still one of the best. It's still one that you keep coming back to. We can make all these crazy, new styled deck building games, but most of them can't even compete with the OG.
It's really incredible for how bare bones, pure deck building this one is, and it's still, after all these years, it's still considered the best, if not could be the best deck building game. May not be ranked as the best, but there are a lot of people that would probably still rank this one as the best. And yeah, it's crazy how solid it is all the years later. And yeah, it definitely deserves to be on this list. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of them that I would, if we were making a Hall of Fame, that one would make our Hall of
Yeah,
Fame.
for sure, for sure. Speaking of Uwe Rosenberg games, Agricola, revised edition, whatever. Agricola inspired more Uwe Rosenberg games, and I think just a lot of games that want to kind of do kind of farm simulation, add buildings to give you bonuses,
Worker
and special
placement.
effects, worker placement, 100 billion spots for worker placement, sheep in a pen, in a fence, put the fences, inspiring like dinosaur themed games even, and Dinogenics gives me a lot of feel of Agricola and Caverna. So it's crazy the places some of these mechanisms have gone, and this is another one where you're trying to do a lot of things. You can't just focus on one thing, and some people complain about that, but I'm sure that's also another thing that maybe this one didn't create, but definitely showcases.
Yeah, I agree. And this was, I think, one of my first worker placement games that I played, and absolutely loved the mechanism of that. But as I've grown, I'm one of those people that does not love that you have to do everything equally. And the card play in the game is something I didn't really love, but I think people that love that card piece to the game are the ones that are really going to love Agricola.
Yes. And then next up, we have El Grande. And this is a fancy cover here for this version. Is this the one that I keep seeing? It's got the guy on the horse. It's in Board Game Arena. I think that is this game.
I think this one's also on Board Game Arena. Yeah, it's one of the older Euro games. I feel like Board Game Arena has several of them
Yes.
that I've wanted to play. Um, for some reason, I'm thinking this one's better at higher player counts as well.
I
Um,
think so. I think are you kind of putting things out on a map type of thing, so to just be a little more interesting with more players, more stuff going on. But Wolfgang Kramer, I feel like I've seen Ulrich Richard here feel like I've seen that name too, but I'm much more familiar with Kramer and definitely a lot of his games have made a huge impact on the hobby. And this one, I don't hear that much about it, but it is one that has always been on my to play list.
Yeah, and yeah, I think it's maybe one of the granddaddies of the area control
Oh,
kind
yep.
of thing. So yeah, this is one that I've wanted to try as well, but I think kind of being one of those older games, better at higher player counts, maybe a little more confrontation. Um, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, I've definitely heard it enough that I think it should be on the list.
Yes. And Reiner Knizia with another game here in Ra. And I assume that's just the Ra in any of its versions, not specifically this 25th century fancy schmancy edition.
Yeah, I would think it'd be any of them, and I wonder if though the 20, the new version here helped it at all because I think it's been a bit of a revival. The Dice Tower has recently been doing their top 100 games of all time, and I think this has gotten back onto the lists of Tom and the people like in the last couple of years after falling off the list. So I think having this kind of new, pretty widely available version has definitely helped the game. But I can definitely see why, as a kind of bidding game or push your luck kind of game, this one definitely belongs in the conversation for sure. I guess it's not
Yes.
really bidding necessarily, more push your luck
Yeah. A
auction
little bit of both.
auction
A little bit of
style.
both.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely one of the most popular auction games in modern board gaming for sure.
yeah. We have played that one, and I do
Yeah.
enjoy that one quite a bit.
Next up, oh, yeah,
Oh, we're sticking with the ones that we have played. And we got Ticket to Ride, and yeah, this is a classic one. The first one that I played was actually Ticket to Ride Europe, and I enjoyed that one quite a bit. It was one of the games that definitely got me into the hobby in the first place. So this one definitely deserves to be in here because I think it's been this along with one that I think is still coming, or probably the top two games that would get kind of people into this
yeah,
the modern version of the hobby, I would say. And yeah, this one continues to be uh, popular even nowadays. And this one's actually made a resurgence back onto my list because of playing the different maps and stuff that they have, which
yeah,
kind of all play a little differently, and some are a little bit more confrontational than others. So that is one of the few games, I guess, that's continuing to
yeah.
push that. And some of the maps, at least, some are a little bit more open. Um,
Yeah, that is one
yeah,
that it can just really, it can get really frustrating between players where not even intentionally you'll just cut someone off. And I guess it does feel a little like a lot of the games in here where there is some interaction where a lot of modern games there just really isn't. But we let it slide on this one because anybody can play it. This is a grandma. You go over to grandma's house, she can play it. Anybody can play
eight
it.
plus.
Yes, 8 plus. So not the 7-year-olds. But yeah, a little bit of a jump in the thumbs up. So we had 197 up to 229, which not a shocker. This deserves to be in here. This deserved to be in here 10 years ago. They should have made this list and put Ticket to Ride in there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I
Oh my
agree.
goodness, it's 20 years old, man. We old.
That's pretty crazy. That is pretty crazy. It does not feel like a 20-year-old game at all.
Yeah,
It doesn't feel very old.
it doesn't. Oh boy, and this one's even old. This is another 10 years,
This is a
almost
really
30.
old game. This is 30 years. Catan. And yeah, this is the other, probably the top two that got me into the hobby initially here with Catan as well, or Settlers of Catan. This one's just a classic game. This has to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
Uh, to me, this one maybe should have been the most thumbed up. It's probably the one out of these top three that I played that I, at this point, like the least. Definitely when I first played it, though, I was like, wow, games can do this. This is awesome. This
yeah,
is awesome. And, people that do still, maybe they're like, this is all I need in board games and love it, love just sticking with this. And I can totally understand that as well. Because it is a solid game. I think just now seeing all these other ones that have probably come, I mean, from it in a way, some one way or another, just whole hobby as a whole has kind of come from games like this. Yeah, it's an awesome game, and it 100% deserves to be on here. Probably like the number one for
Yeah.
board games.
I mean, it's
Whereas like the trading card games, probably be like Magic would be the number one. But yeah, like board game wise, I feel like Catan
yeah.
would be like one of the number ones.
Yeah, I feel like that is the top one right there. And I really like this cover. This is German edition here.
I do
That's
too.
really nice looking.
Das Spiel.
Das Spiel. Yeah, and we like it so much, liked it so much back in the day, we would play it at two players, even though apparently it's only three plus. So that's how crazy we were. Uh, I'd like to see some sort of re-implementation of this, whether it's in a legacy version or just something really inspired, because there's a lot of cool things in the game. I love
Mhm.
rolling dice, everyone gaining resources off of that. Trading was very clean. I'd like to see a new modern implementation. So,
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think there's some people that say like some expansions and stuff are really, really solid. I guess I don't know. Let us know in the comments below if you've played a bunch of the Catan expansions. If there are some that it's like, oh, if you play it with this, it's gonna totally change your mind on it. You're gonna want to play it some more because yeah, I do like what it all does. It's just there's parts about it that feel more constricting than they
yes.
initially did. Kind of like Agricola for me. Loved it initially, and then grew to feel like it was very constricting and just wasn't my style. Not become my style of game that I tend to enjoy.
Yeah. Yep. And then I believe the last one here, the most voted up, to my surprise. I mean, I'm happy about it. 'Cause
I'm a little surprised too.
I have always loved Carcassonne, but I feel like I've always been not in the minority because a lot of people love Carcassonne, but for talking about those core games that get you into the hobby, I feel like it's always been at least a third behind Catan and Ticket to Ride.
It
But
it
there is,
really does feel like that. I was shocked myself to see that that was the most voted up because yeah, it definitely feels like it's Catan, Ticket to Ride, and there's people that don't even mention Carcassonne in
yeah,
the conversation. It was one that we did play somewhat early as well, uh, and had a blast with it. It was probably initially, I don't know, did we like it the most? I feel like
I
ended up
rem
enjoying it the most. I mean, we
so
liked the
what's
other game. It's
was
hard
it
to
our
say
favorite
because
game back then, you're wondering?
yeah, that kind of thing.
I
Because
remember that we made a list back when we had like 20. I had 20 games, you had 30 played, which is crazy to think about now that we have 10 times that under our belt. But I remember we came down to the same final two. It was Carcassonne and Stone Age, and I had Carcassonne number one, and you had Stone Age number one. So it was always right up there at the top for us. Um, and I would say I still love it as much as I did back then. We just have so many more games that have moved up and still in my top games of all time if you watch that list. And the expansions are phenomenal. Some better than others, but there's so much variety with them. So you can't really complain about lack of content or lack of variable pieces to the game. And it's such a simple formula. I think that's something that just warrants being on the list. A game that is so approachable and so solid and does so much, but it's just pretty simple on your individual turn. It's just like, oh, I just do this. I just place a tile. But overall, there's just this whole bunch of stuff going on the board that keeps you interested throughout.
yeah, 100%. And like it says in there, you can play friendly or cutthroat. And that's, yeah, two totally different ways you can play this one because, yeah, it allows you to, uh, unlike maybe some of those other ones where it maybe starts to feel restricting, like
Mm,
Catan, this one I feel like as you play it more, you start to be like playing it in a different way. Or you
yeah,
can always play it friendly if you want to, and then maybe it wouldn't be as interesting. But then you get to the point where uh, you start being like, okay, well now instead I'm going to start making sneaky things to get in once you start to really understand the game, and it just kind of is this secondary level of the game that uh, some of those intro ones don't like have a second level. So
yeah,
maybe that's why
yeah,
some of
that
the
could
votes.
be.
So.
that could be. Although Ticket to Ride also has kind of changed the more you play it, and
That's true.
just collecting those cards at a certain point, we're not quite to the pro level where you collect 50 cards and then
Where
start
you pretty
playing,
much
but
run the deck empty.
we're getting there.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah,
But yeah, those are the 25 games they added to the Hall of Fame. And I would say
pretty
I
good.
agree with especially all the ones that I have
Yeah,
played. I think those all definitely make sense. And a lot of the other ones I've definitely heard of or yeah, would 100% agree from what I know about them.
yeah,
Uh,
they're pretty great, and like I don't know how popular Stone Age is because that's kind of one that I would group in with some of
yeah,
these, but I don't hear it mentioned nearly as much as these three, so I think that's just for us. Obviously, I'd want some more Bruno Catala. I don't think he made an entry on this list. Five Tribes, put something there. But a big one for me, Terraforming Mars. Where is Terraforming Mars? That's got to be on this list.
that should be on this list. I mean, it's definitely it was think it was like the first game to have this huge deck of cards that are all different. And now that has become a very big thing today. And maybe it's just a little too recent.
Yeah, what is that, 2014 or
Yeah,
2011 or
it's
something like
probably
that?
has been about 10 years now. So maybe
Let's
it
see.
maybe it should be on there.
Terraform 2016. So it's getting there. When was Brass again? Although the original Brass does
The
go
original
back
brass was like quite a bit
further.
older.
Yeah.
So yeah, it might just be a little bit too new, but yeah, second round, I think that one would
Uh,
definitely be on there, or should at least be considered.
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
yeah, that has made a big impact on what games are now today. Because I feel like there have been a lot of games that have
Yeah.
become very popular, especially today, that have used that like, okay, we're gonna be making this deck of 150 cards, and they're all gonna be unique. Uh, it's a crazy thing that I'm like, wow, I don't. How much time goes into figuring that stuff out? I don't even know.
It's
Uh,
crazy. It is crazy. But yeah, that's the list. Congratulations to all of these games and all the designers who are, who knows if they're even alive. Some of these games are back in the 1700s, but
Oh,
most
it's pretty old. But yeah, yeah. Let us know in the comments below if you agree with all these picks. If you think there were any that were snubbed, should have been in there, should have been included. It's limited to 25, so I mean,
yeah,
they got to make cuts somewhere. I'm sure there are a lot of great ones, especially if we went and looked right now at the top 100, 200, 300 games on Board Game Geek. I'm sure we'd be like, oh, well, how is that not on there? I
how is
hear of this
Sky
one all the
Team?
time.
Where
Oh,
is
the
Sky
Sky Team.
Team?
Exactly. But but otherwise, if you like the video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe for future content. We hope to see you on our next video. And as always, don't forget to keep on nibbling on our content.